If you watched both practice sessions at the Austrian Grand Prix, you probably walked away thinking one thing: Mercedes have this weekend completely under control. Kimi Antonelli topped the timesheets, the silver arrows looked planted through every corner, and Ferrari appeared to be struggling badly. Lewis Hamilton looked frustrated inside the cockpit, Charles Leclerc never seemed comfortable, and the timing screens suggested Ferrari were nowhere near the fight for pole position. But what if I told you that's exactly what Ferrari wanted everyone to believe? What if the biggest story from Friday wasn't Mercedes' incredible speed, but Ferrari deliberately hiding theirs? Because once you dive into the telemetry, the GPS traces, the top speed data, and Ferrari's unusual run plan, an entirely different picture begins to emerge. And surprisingly, Lewis Hamilton's own telemetry may have accidentally exposed Ferrari's secret strategy. So the real question isn't whether Mercedes are the fastest team heading into qualifying, it's whether Ferrari have been sandbagging the entire day. And if that's true, Saturday could look completely different. Let's start with the first clue because it arrived almost immediately during FP1. Before the weekend even began, multiple reports suggested Ferrari would delay introducing their upgraded power unit until Saturday morning. The expectation inside the paddock was simple: they would complete Friday using the older specification before switching to the new engine for FP3. But once practice actually started, something didn't quite add up. Hamilton's acceleration traces looked unusually smooth. The deployment profile was different. The energy recovery seemed more consistent than previous weekends. That immediately raised one massive question. Did Ferrari actually install the new power unit much earlier than everyone expected? If they did, why were they still so slow? Well, because having a new engine doesn't necessarily mean you're using all of it. Teams frequently run conservative engine modes during Friday practice to preserve reliability, gather data, and avoid showing rivals their true performance. Ferrari may have done exactly that. Now take a closer look at Hamilton's fastest FP1 lap. On paper, it wasn't spectacular, but telemetry tells a completely different story. Through several medium and high-speed corners, Hamilton was carrying competitive minimum speeds despite obvious balance issues. Then something strange happened on every straight. Instead of continuing to gain speed, Ferrari simply plateaued. The acceleration flattened far earlier than Mercedes. That's incredibly unusual. Normally, when Ferrari are lacking pace, they're losing time in the corners because of mechanical grip or aerodynamic instability. Here, the opposite was happening. The car looked capable through much of the lap, but the straight-line performance appeared artificially limited. That's the first major clue suggesting Ferrari weren't running anywhere near maximum engine power. Then came FP2, and suddenly the evidence became even stronger. Everyone focused on Kimi Antonelli setting the fastest lap of the day, but almost nobody looked beyond the final lap time itself. Compare Hamilton's GPS trace directly against Antonelli's, and one statistic jumps off the screen immediately: top speed. Into Sector 1, Antonelli reaches around 328 kilometers per hour, while Hamilton is several kilometers slower. That's already significant. But then Sector 2 becomes even more interesting. Mercedes continue pulling away down the straights, while Ferrari lose over 10 kilometers per hour compared to their rivals. By the final sector, the same pattern repeats itself yet again. 3 sectors, 3 straights, 3 identical trends. Now ask yourself this: does Ferrari suddenly forget how to build powerful engines every Friday? Or are they deliberately running extremely conservative power modes? History tells us the second explanation makes far more sense. But here's where the story becomes even more fascinating because Ferrari weren't the only team behaving differently. Mercedes appeared to be doing something unusual as well. Traditionally, Mercedes never reveal everything during Friday practice. They often prioritize long-run consistency, engine preservation, and setup experimentation over headline lap times. Yet this weekend looked completely different. Antonelli was pushing hard. Russell looked aggressive. Their engine deployment appeared much stronger than usual. In other words, Mercedes may actually have been running higher power modes than they normally would on a Friday. And if one team is showing more than usual while another is hiding more than usual, the timing screens become almost meaningless. Suddenly, those gaps between first and fifth don't actually represent genuine qualifying pace anymore. Now let's talk about another detail almost everyone missed. Ferrari spent a significant portion of Friday completing back-to-back aerodynamic tests rather than pure performance runs. Engineers repeatedly changed configurations between garage visits, gathering valuable data rather than chasing lap times. That explains why Hamilton's sessions often looked inconsistent. One run would show promising sector times before the next appeared considerably slower. Fans watching only the leaderboard naturally assumed Ferrari were struggling. In reality, the engineers may never have intended those laps to be representative at all. Every lap was another experiment. Every run generated more data. Every setup change moved them closer to Saturday's final configuration. But that's only half the story. Another hidden factor could be fuel load. Remember what Ferrari did in Barcelona? They appeared disappointingly slow throughout Friday before suddenly finding enormous pace overnight. Analysts later suggested they had been carrying significantly more fuel than rivals during practice, making the car appear much slower than it actually was. Could Austria be following exactly the same blueprint? It certainly looks possible. Heavy fuel affects braking zones, corner entry, tire temperatures, and acceleration. The car feels heavier everywhere. Remove 20 or 30 kilograms overnight and suddenly an entirely different Ferrari appears. If that pattern repeats again this weekend, qualifying could surprise everyone. And here's another question nobody seems to be asking. Why would Ferrari willingly hide their speed? The answer is actually quite simple. Formula One has become a data war. Every GPS trace, every onboard camera angle, every speed trap, and every telemetry point is studied by rival engineers within minutes. If Ferrari reveal their true engine deployment on Friday, Mercedes and Red Bull immediately know where they are vulnerable. If Ferrari keep those performance gains hidden until qualifying, rivals have almost no time left to react. It's not about fooling the fans, it's about denying competitors valuable information. Modern Formula One is won just as much inside the factory as it is on the racetrack. Of course, none of this guarantees Ferrari will suddenly dominate qualifying. There are still genuine concerns. Hamilton repeatedly complained about balance throughout both sessions. The rear of the car looked nervous on corner exit while the front axle occasionally washed wide during medium-speed turns. Those issues cannot simply be ignored. Even with more engine power available, poor balance can easily cost several tenths across a lap. Ferrari's overnight work therefore becomes absolutely critical. If they solve those handling problems while simultaneously unlocking the engine's full potential, the transformation could be dramatic. If they don't, Friday's hidden pace may never actually appear. Then there's tire management, arguably Ferrari's biggest strength over recent race weekends. Austria places enormous stress on the rear tires, especially during long stints under high temperatures. That's exactly where Ferrari have excelled recently. Barcelona proved they could extend tire life while maintaining competitive pace, something Mercedes still struggle with occasionally. If Sunday's race becomes a two-stop or even a three-stop strategy battle, Ferrari could possess an enormous advantage regardless of qualifying position. Sometimes the fastest qualifying car isn't the fastest race car, and Ferrari know that better than anyone. Now let's return to Lewis Hamilton because his telemetry may have revealed something even bigger than Ferrari's engine settings. Throughout several laps, Hamilton appeared to lift slightly earlier before heavy braking zones despite still carrying competitive corner speeds. That usually indicates controlled running rather than maximum attack. Drivers chasing absolute lap time rarely leave performance on the table voluntarily, yet Hamilton repeatedly looked like someone executing a carefully planned program instead of chasing headlines. Could that have been instruction from the pit wall? Quite possibly. Teams often ask drivers to complete very specific data collection runs that sacrifice lap time for engineering analysis. To fans, it looks slow. To engineers, it's priceless information. Meanwhile, Mercedes cannot afford to become overconfident. Friday's success has often failed to translate into Saturday dominance throughout recent seasons. We've seen multiple weekends where teams top practice only to lose pole position once rivals finally unleash maximum engine modes. Mercedes know this. Ferrari know this. Red Bull certainly know this. That's why nobody inside the paddock will be celebrating after topping Friday timesheets. The real battle hasn't even started yet. So where does this leave us heading into FP3 and qualifying? If Ferrari continue looking slow tomorrow morning, perhaps Friday genuinely reflected their pace. But if Hamilton suddenly jumps several tenths closer, if Ferrari's straight-line speed mysteriously increases, and if those handling complaints begin disappearing, then today's practice sessions will suddenly make perfect sense. The hidden clues, the conservative engine modes, the unusual run plans, the aerodynamic experiments, and the heavy fuel theory will all fit together into one very convincing picture. Ferrari weren't beaten, they were simply hiding. And that's exactly why Saturday could become one of the biggest surprises of the season. Everyone is talking about Mercedes. Everyone is watching Antonelli. Everyone believes Ferrari are already out of contention. But Formula One has a habit of punishing anyone who celebrates too early. The stopwatch only tells part of the story, while telemetry often tells the rest. And today, that telemetry may have exposed something Ferrari never wanted the rest of the paddock to notice. Their real pace could still be waiting. If that's true, qualifying is about to become far more unpredictable than Friday's timing screen suggested, and Lewis Hamilton may have unintentionally